Hello, John Miyares again from the USDA NASS Great Lakes Regional Field Office in East Lansing, Michigan. In this presentation, I'm going to demonstrate how you can enter data into CAPI for an ag tract questionnaire that would have previously been completed on paper. Please note that this example is being done for an operation in the Great Lakes region, which includes the states of Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. So some of the commodities that you will see in the questionnaire could be different from the crops you'll be working with in your state. Let's look at a situation where we have Tract E has taken over most of Tract F's land. So as I go to screen in Tract E, they are going to qualify as an ag tract operator. I'm going to answer the first question as a yes, and we are going to submit the tract and start the survey. As I go through here, notice that if there is an existing partner on the record, that will come in and we can make sure that that's verified, just like what we would normally see on other surveys. It asks, how many acres are we operating inside the red boundaries? We're going to say 510. Now, when you're entering the information about what is in the tract, we no longer have to break it down by what are in separate fields. We can lump it all together and treat it like it was just one field. You are going to need to pay attention to make sure that all the acres are accounted for properly and that they are going to add up. So we'll start by saying I have a 5-acre farmstead. I've got 15 acres of waste. Say I've got 75 acres of woods. I've got 30 acres of permanent pasture. I don't have, well, let's say I have 10 acres of idle cropland. We'll put that in CRP. I've got 50 acres of wheat that I've used as a cover crop that I will be double cropping with soybeans. I don't grow any oats. I have 125 acres of corn planted, and I've planted all but 20 acres at this point. Acres harvested for grain is going to be 125. Soybeans, I'll say I have 175 acres of soybeans, and I've planted all of them at this point. For hay, I'm going to say I've got 25 acres of grass hay, and I don't have any other crops. I might then ask how many acres are going to be double cropped. This question has actually changed from the way it was asked in 2019. It used to be the case that we wanted this box to account for acres where there were 2 crops planted in the same field, like winter wheat followed by soybeans, even if the wheat was not harvested, or 2 uses of the same crop, like when you can get 1 cut of dry hay and 1 cut of haylage from the same field. Starting in 2021, the question has been rewritten to be more closely aligned with how the question is written on the June Crops APS questionnaire. As you can see, the question now reads, how many acres inside the red boundary will be double cropped in 2021? By asking for acres that were double cropped, we are looking for acres on which 2 crops were harvested from the same field in the same season. The interviewer's manual has been updated to reflect this change between double cropping and dual utilizations for this question. In this particular example, since the winter wheat was planted as a cover crop and is not being harvested before the soybeans are planted in that field, then this is not a double cropping situation, and we would say that 0 acres were being double cropped. Consequently, none of the soybeans were planted following another harvested crop, so I'll enter a 0 into that box as well. However, had the 50 acres of wheat been harvested for grain before the soybeans were planted, then we would want to enter a 50 in both of these boxes. Was section D reported or observed? This is important if we have to visually observe the field because we can't contact the operator. We do want to know this versus were these data reported by the operator. That can also be important because it's possible we'll have some operators that will give us this much and nothing else. Now let's see what we've got here. I'm going to say that the total operation is going to have 1,000 acres owned. It's going to have 1,500 acres rented, nothing rented out. That includes everything. Oops. You don't want to check no here because then it'll give you a warning that we got to fix our total, because they do want to check to see if the total acres do include the farm stand, cropland, woodland, and so on. Did we have anything on an AUM basis? We'll say no. How much was in cropland? Well, I'm going to say 2,000 acres are in cropland. Of the total acres operated, how much is in CRP? I'm just going to say those 10 acres of cropland were in CRP. Now, this particular operator is jumping up and missing some of the other crop questions because the crop stocks box was not checked. You may not see that here in the instrument, but behind the scenes, it knows that some of the crop questions do not need to be asked of this operation. So I'm going to put in that they have 280,000 bushels of storage. I'll say they have 80,000 bushels of corn on hand and 5,000 bushels of soybeans. Were any of the new stocks reported? No, we don't have anybody that should have new crop stocks at this point. Do we have any hogs or pigs? We'll say no and no intentions. I want to take a quick look at the cattle and calves section of the Ag Track questionnaire. Suppose somebody tells you that they do have cattle or will have cattle. Just want to do a quick reminder of our definitions here. A beef cow is a female bovine that is bred to produce cattle that are to be raised for meat. Milk cows are female bovines that are intended to produce milk. Let's say that they do happen to have a couple of beef cows. So I'll say that they have 2 beef cows. They don't have any bulls. And what we're going to have here is we'll say that we have 1 heifer and 1 steer. And we do not have any heifer, steer, or bull calves, so the total inventory on hand is calculated to be 4. We're then asked if we have any cattle on feed. Again, pay very close attention to the definition of what it means to be on feed. What I'm going to say is that I have 2 of them on feed, the heifer and the steer that were not kept for breeding. Then it's asking about the calf crop on the total acres operated. How many are expected to calve? We're going to say both of them. Of the calves born, well, there were none born on the operation. So we're going to have 0, 0, 0. And so the total calves born from January through May is going to be 0. We're going to assume that the heifer and the steer were born on the operation, but not in 2021. Look at some of the other livestock questions. One of the changes from past years is that we're no longer going to be asking sheep and lamb inventory or goat and kid inventory. So if we say yes, then it just goes on to the next page. we don't have any goats or kids, then it will go through the screening questions as we normally have. But if I said yes to any one of these questions, I will not be asked about any goats or kids. The horse and pony section hasn't really changed much in the last few years. Let's say that they have 2 horses, but they don't have any donkeys, but then they do have both of those owned. Will this operation or anyone be having labor? Well, for somebody that has as big an operation as they have, they're going to, let's say, have 2 people helping them out. The market value questions have been simplified from previous years so that you can provide a value estimate for the total market value of all land and buildings operated, not just what was owned, what was rented in, or what was rented out. Now you'll notice in the little calculator here that the DK is grayed out. So you're not going to be able to put a don't know in that cell. If the operator doesn't know the market value or refuses to provide that information, then you can just leave that blank. And then on the next page, they are asking for the value per acre for the cropland and the permanent pasture. We could put in some numbers here. Or again, if the operator refuses, we can just leave those questions blank. The sales categories were condensed last year because of the number of categories was just getting way too big. You'll notice here that $0 used to be its own category. Now 0 to 999 is all one. For an operation this size, I'm going to say that they are making $250,000 to $500,000. If we had said it was under $1,000, it's going to open up the point table for us. I can show you that in a separate example. We're going to say that this is a grain operator since he's got more grains than he does cattle. And then we go on to the technology use questions. The technology use questions have been given a major overhaul from previous years. So first question, in the past 12 months, did this farm or ranch use precision agriculture practices to manage crops or livestock using GPS guidance systems, yield monitoring, etc.? For this, I'm going to say no. For this farm, do you use any of the following types of computers? Well, let's say this person has a desktop, they have a smartphone, they don't have a tablet, and they don't have any other type of computer. We'll go to the next. How do you access your internet? Well, option 1, you pay for it. Option 2, you get it for free. This would typically be for people who are accessing the internet using public Wi-Fi, places like library, McDonald's, and so on. And if they do not have access to the internet, we're going to leave that blank. What kind of internet plan do they have? Well, we'll say that they have the cellular data plan and they have high-speed internet at the farm itself, but they don't have satellite, they don't have dial-up, they don't have an other option. Here they want to know how operators are using the internet for the farm business. Let's say we have a particular person is going to use the internet to buy feed. So we'll click there. Conduct marketing activities, direct sales of commodities, and so on. We'll say no. Conduct non-agricultural business such as making airline reservations. We can say yes. For this farm or ranch, did the operator actually access the NAS website? For this, we'll say no. Did they access any other USDA websites? Well, if they were looking at one of the research websites like ERS or ARS, we might click yes, but otherwise, let's say no. But perhaps we have somebody who needs to access USDA Service Center and look at their accounts online. For that, we can say yes. Have you accessed any other federal government websites in the last 12 months, excluding USDA websites? We're going to say for this, no. And then for agricultural or farm business, again, we'll say no. The operator characteristics section is very similar to what we've been asking for several years. What is the age of the operator as of December 31st, 2020? What is the ethnicity of the operator, Hispanic or not Hispanic? Is the race of the operator white, Black or African American, American Indian, Alaskan Native, Asian, Native Hawaiian, other Pacific Islander? If they are going to be American Indian or Alaskan Native tribe, we do want to specify that here. And then we want to put in the gender, male or female. As we get to the end of the survey, if they want to copy the results, they would want to have it mailed to them. We would enter in the address as we have it. And then we can, just like in most other CAPI surveys, enter in the information. However, the respondent mode, you'll notice, is PATI. It stands for Paper Assisted Telephone Interview. And essentially that means that you're calling them on the phone and entering the data on paper. That is the only valid mode that is permitted for this survey this year. And then once we've reached the end of the survey, we can hit Submit. And we'll be done. And bring us back to our listings.